Ahoy hoy gang, if this is your first time with us, welcome, and if you're joining us in our previous video, hey, we love to see it, and I hope you're doing well. It's Season 7! One of the hardest seasons to rhyme. Seriously, sharpen does not rhyme with 7. Unless I am just, absolutely butchering the words. This would be the first of the Comedy Central seasons, and if I'm being totally honest, I really don't revisit these episodes often. Personally, they just did not have a ton of rewatch value, and so I just shrugged a lot of them off. But were they really that bad, or am I just a complete and utter moron? And can both be true at the same time? Well, there's only one way to find out, and 3 questions to be asked. What worked? What failed? What Omicron Persei 8 marital litigation will be curtailed? I've got a confession. It's time to review Season 7. Seriously, confession doesn't even rhyme with 7. What are they doing? And here we are, the beginning of a whole new chapter of Futurama. This is the episode that will set the tone for the next 4 seasons. This is how we come back to our crew after they went through that unknown portal. And it's fine. It's completely and utterly okay. Fry comes and asks the professor what's going on, and Farnsworth reveals what happened to the crew. After they went through a kind of portal, which was a sort of Comedy Central canal, pause for in-the-know snickering, Zap and the Nimbus followed suit, and they all got crushed and turned into just some heads on some bones that need to be dropped into stem cells to get brought back to life. However, everyone but Leela comes back, with Leela being left in a deep coma. So Fry gets a robot version of Leela made, and they go and offer the original body to a monster. The original wakes up, she fights with her robot self to get to Fry, and it's a whole big nothing. It's just nothing. Turns out Fry was a robot the entire time, so Robo-Fry and Robo-Leela get all Terminator, and they have a thing going, and the OG Fry gets spat out ready to start the new season. And that's all fine and good, but I think Bender is the perfect example of what this new season is going for. See, Bender is overheating throughout the episode, so he has to dance or else he blows. He has to party like his life depended on it. And you know what? As dumb as the whole Leela Fry thing was overall, I kind of adored the Bender scenes. I don't know, there's elements that are really fun, and then there's just absolutely nothing. And I'm not gonna pretend that animated comedy has to be, inherently elevated, right? Not everything has to be a masterpiece all the time. The show is allowed to be just stupid comedy if that's what the writers want to do. Comedy Central has a much different audience than Fox, and it's probably closer to the audience you'd find on something like Adult Swim, so they have to write for that kind of audience. Episodes would also actually be shorter by about 1.5 minutes, which doesn't seem like a lot, but when you add in intro and outro, it adds up. And I think Rebirth is just growing pains ultimately. The voice acting is still top-notch, the animation is really solid, and ultimately the things I could hate were more personal taste than anything. Overall though, I don't know. Personally, it just felt like the common denominator answer was always the right one in the writing process. If you're just subverting expectations for the sake of subverting expectations, yeah, it makes sense Fry was a robot too. Which, I don't know. I know Futurama does that sometimes, but it just felt like filler, all things considered. Rebirth is a stem cell reinforced 7 out of 10. Alright, here we go. First real episode of the season. Rebirth had to do a lot of heavy lifting, but this is gonna be some good classic Futurama, baby. I can feel it in me bones. There's a death sphere named Vigeny that's coming to destroy Earth. Vigeny would actually be played by special guest Chris Elliott, who showed up in a ton of King of the Hill and obviously had and has a long and storied comedic career. And his daughter is great in The Bear, and I'm not padding, you're padding. Don't you care about my interesting Snapple facts? They make me who I am. Anyway, Nixon has Farnsworth try and take it out, so Leela and Zap end up on a stealth fighter that gets taken out by the Death Sphere, and they crash land on a paradise planet. Fry and the gang become doomsday preachers. That's your B story. You see, Vigini's goal is to censor indecency, so it takes out any planets that might be promoting any sort of illicit or erotic ideas. Zap and Leela become the Adam and Eve of the Paradise Planet, with Leela trapped under a log and Zap taking really good care of her, even bringing her nutberries that look a lot like Fry's trail mix he gave Leela before she left. Look, if you're gonna break the rule of threes, you need to go the extra mile. You need to push it way past its limits. Leela finds out Zap had been lying about everything and even trapped her legs under the log so she'd have to count on him. Like, it's not even so absurd it's funny. It's just Zap being pretty completely and utterly kind of vile. And then the episode ends with him and Leela getting down for Vigini. Like, what? What was the joke of the episode? Zap did all this stuff and Leela thought he was just being nice, but in reality he was effectively keeping her pinned down and at his mercy, so she'd have to depend on him and love him? If you at least interspersed it with us seeing him drinking the mineral water or the snacks, yeah, okay, there's an idea there, but it's just shotgunned at you one after another all at once, so it just feels weird. I don't know. It's a very odd episode. And it's not even like it's an aged poorly argument. A censorship bot is honestly pretty evergreen, and Vigini is not the thing I have an issue with in the episode. It's literally just that there is no jokes to the Leela and Zap story, and it just takes that weird angle. It's baffling to me. I am just not a fan. Inagata de Leela is an apple-eating 4 out of 10. E-waste is bad, you guys. E-waste is very, very bad. Recycle. Otherwise, the Planet Express crew is going to have to fly to a junk planet, dispose of the e-waste, and destroy their environment. The message isn't subtle. Anyway, throw that garbage phone in the trash because Mom's new iPhone is out. Buy tech. Buy tech. Consume. 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 It makes sense they'd have to talk about Apple and iPhones, and I appreciate that they do the big e-waste message right before it as a very aware joke. Everyone gets new phones. Fry and Bender start competing to go viral on this new thing called Twitcher, and yeah. Oh, and Leela has a boil named Susan Boyle, who sings. It's a singing boil. Played by Craig Ferguson, acclaimed late talk show host, Drew Carey show scene stealer, and all-around genuinely funny guy who spends the episode just sorta shrieking. Yay. Fry takes a video of the screaming boil and it goes viral to Leela's horror, and Fry goes about trying to set it right, even diving into a pool of goat vomit, so Leela will forgive him. There are some one-off jokes that genuinely do work, and I mean, you can tell the writing is still just as aware as it was. It's just on very, very shaky ground. Made sense Mom would make the iPhone and everything, but This felt like a forced topical episode. Futurama is at its strongest when it's able to distance itself enough from what the real-world thing it's parodying is. This felt just too conjoined to that literal idea. Like they were afraid you weren't gonna get it as a satire of Apple if they didn't call them iPhones. General stuff like that, almost like they were still writing for a Fox audience. It definitely felt like testing the waters, and overall is just a jumble. Bender does have some fun bits, and again, there are fun jokes, but overall the episode is just sorta empty in comparison. Attack of the Killer App is a Club Penguin Band 5 out of 10. George Takei guest stars, and I genuinely think he's the guest star that appears the most, and is definitely the guest star that appears the most in the Comedy Central era. Did I mention I really liked him in Yakuza Like a Dragon? He was phenomenal. Always great to hear him in dramatic roles. Man has a very storied past. Next to him, or I guess like he would beat him, is Frank Welker, who for some reason is always listed as a guest star, but he's in a ton of episodes as Nibbler. I don't know. I would say he's part of the main cast. Oh, you want to know about the episode? Oh, Amy and Kif break up, Amy and Bender hook up, robosexual relationships are taboo, they get sent to pray the, I guess, robo-affection away, I guess, do a march downtown and launch Proposition Infinity so they can be together, and when it passes, and Bender learns he'd have to be monogamous, he bounces and Amy gets back together with Kif. That's it. You know what it's referencing, and honestly, I'm glad the episode feels as dated as it does. But when you're talking about same-sex marriage, I don't know. It's a tricky element to satirize while maintaining your show's identity. Bender not wanting to be with Amy at the end of the episode because he doesn't want to be tied down and he's just on that beach in silence. That was the first joke I thought was genuinely perfect in the entire show this season. I thought that was absolutely perfect and a brilliant way to conclude that idea. That's how you bring it right back to being Futurama for the next week's episode. It's also important that while Amy and Bender absolutely broke up, the proposition still passed and they walked that line with a masterful deftness. The episode as a whole was just sort of fine though. There wasn't any like standout jokes outside of Bender sitting there in silence that like, if Proposition Infinity is your favorite episode, I would be very, very surprised. It's topical, it's there, it did a good satire, it just was fine. I don't know. Proposition Infinity is a bad boy loving 6 out of 10. Not great, not bad, there and watchable. Yum, yum. You know what? I know I have sounded harsh. I have sounded like I've been not a fan of the series. But I will commend this episode for wasting my time brilliantly. The more I think on this episode, the more I actually have come to appreciate what it's doing. Fry gets kicked off Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and Hubert keeps calling his uncle an idiot, which he admittedly is. Then Professor Farnsworth shows Fry his Da Vinci display, and when Fry puts on Da Vinci's beard, he accidentally finds a scroll with the blueprint for a machine. So good old Professor Farnsworth is on the hunt for one of Da Vinci's greatest untold creations. See, this is why I had such a problem with Attack of the Killer app. It hung on the Apple idea, where this is very obviously the Da Vinci Code parody, even says it in the name, but it's never fully on the nose about it. They're just chasing all of these clues all over and end up in future Italy, and there's this ancient rat-powered robot, and it's just so unnecessarily complicated and meandering, which is the joke. Which is the parody of the Da Vinci Code. It's all these steps just to go, oh yeah, here's a spaceship, go and have fun on the other part of the episode. Hubert and Fry end up on Planet Vinci, which is full of Leonardo da Vinci type characters, except Leonardo da Vinci is the dumbest of them all. The man hailed as a legendary inventor on Earth was a total moron on Vinci. There you go. There's your conflict. You got like 6 minutes to wrap the episode. Have fun. On the one hand, I commend them for taking so long in the setup and wasting time. The more it went on, the funnier it became, which shows so much more brilliantly here compared to, say, the second episode of the season. They're still figuring out this new style and seeing what works. Farnsworth runs off to take advanced classes, and Fry and Leonardo just kinda pal around. Oh, and Fry helps Leo build his doomsday machine so he can take everyone out and show them he's not some idiot. Then it doesn't work and he gets crushed by a gear, and bing bang boom, Hubert and Fry go home. It's such a smartly dumb episode that has Hubert learning to appreciate Fry just a little bit more. I don't know, it was the first episode of the season that I actually really got some enjoyment out of in its entirety. They really go all out on the professor in the Comedy Central run, and I honestly really appreciate how central he is to a lot more of the A stories this time around. Billy West is largely playing off of himself this episode, and you can really hear him having fun with it. I don't know, I know it's dumb, but the Duh-Vinci Code is an ice cream lovin' 8 out of 10. This episode hurts. This episode hurts in a way that left me gutted. The gang are doing a reenactment of the Great Sith Wars, and Hermes is a tabulating fiend. They fight the good fight, and one of the Sith utters one of the saddest lines I've ever seen typed out, spoken, anything. Tell my mom to pick me up at Quiznos. Quiznos, toasty Quiznos. There are only 153 of these endangered beauties in the entire United States. I can only hope for a second coming of toasted bread and melted cheese in this future timeline. Otherwise, I will know this is not a timeline worth living in. Quiznos slapped. That's all I'm saying. Bender doesn't listen to anyone except for Inspector 5, who was the inspector that cleared him when he came off the conveyor belt. But when it turns out that Bender isn't as immortal as he thinks he is, thanks to a factory defect that the inspector left out, he and Hermes go to find the inspector that would let a defective robot out of the line. It takes them to the central bureaucracy, and you get the first appearance of Billy West playing a Paul Lynde-style bureaucrat that would show up throughout the Comedy Central era. Mom is hunting down her defective robot, Hermes and Bender escape to Mexico and find Inspector 5's empty house, and yeah, it was Hermes. Hermes let Bender go off the line with a defective part so that he could have a shot at life instead of being scrapped like all the other failures. You hand wave away all the coincidences, and there's just a story of a young Hermes seeing this cute, beer-swilling baby robot and just wanting to help. I'm kind of upset it never really goes anywhere or was set up previously, but as a standalone episode, it's genuinely good. It knows how to pull at your heartstrings in a perfected way. I actually think it has a better lead up to the conclusion than, say, Jurassic Park, but it just doesn't have that same ending, and that's fine. It's still a really solid episode and shows that they weren't just going into this revival for the money. There were still ideas that they wanted to use, and the next episode builds off of even the high bar this episode sets. Lethal Inspection is a circle gets the square, 9 out of 10. When Fry is late to go on a date with Leela for her birthday, thanks to Bender keeping him up with some robo-hooker bumper-bumpin' shenaniganery, he vows to never be late again, only to end up testing Hubert's new forward-only time machine. Because if it only goes forward in time, it won't cause any time issues. Which, yeah, that makes sense. The episode actually builds off of the ideas in Bender's big score, and I really appreciate that kind of continuity as Hubert slips and flings him, Fry, and Bender thousands of years into the future, unable to get back to their original timeline, while Leela thinks they all blew up in the tragedy that was Hedonism Bot's nuclear meltdown devastated bachelor party. Which is easily, and I mean this sincerely, the funniest thing Hedonism Bot has ever been a part of. Just the absolute devastation around this bachelor party that was supposed to be the rager to end all ragers. It's just kind of beautiful. It's just kind of peak in the best way. I don't know. I really appreciated it. We see cuts of how the rest of the crew deal with a world without Fry, the Professor, and Bender, and we also see how those three deal with each time period, eventually making peace with the fact they'll never go back to their own time and speed through to see the end of the universe, just to have it involve a new Big Bang and an identical universe gets constructed. Hubert slips, they shoot way past the year they're looking for, and Bender has to bring the ship back around again until they're crushing their universal doppelgangers and returning everything to normal, even making sure Fry is on time for his date. Honestly, this is probably the strongest episode of the entire season and one of the strongest of the entire Comedy Central era. This is perfect. This is the evolution of all the ideas you've been introduced to from the series, and it feels like a natural benchmark episode for Futurama. You could end the show on this episode and it would be fantastic, and it's barely halfway through the season. I was frankly baffled an episode like this followed Lethal Inspection, and it just goes to show, even in this first season of a new era, they never lost that creative spark. The late Philip J. Fry is a Morlock avoiding 10 out of 10. Remember how Amy is an intern? The show does too! She gets plastered before a big presentation at Mars University and bungles it, earning herself a nice big fail grade courtesy of the cat-attached professor. Oh, and Nibbler doesn't want to be a pet anymore since everyone knows he can talk and he finds it degrading. Oh look, there's a new cat in the office and Amy's super allergic while everyone else falls in love with it. Is this the obligatory Cats Are Evil and Take Over the World by Manipulating People episode that for some reason is one of the most specific tropes in animated comedy? Why yes, it absolutely is. Cats have invaded Earth from a cat planet in an attempt to drain the planet's energy and send it back to their homeworld to get it to start spinning again. It's an Amy and Nibbler episode focused on stopping a bunch of talking cats. I mean, I'm happy Amy is getting more focus as an independent character, but otherwise the episode it's just kind of background noise. It never elevates the idea and it just feels obligatory more than anything, and while that's okay, a lot of the time, I don't know. The episode just seemed largely unnecessary. You've seen it in Family Guy, Powerpuff Girls, Cats vs. Dogs, Cats vs. Dogs 2, The Revenge of Kitty Galore. It's just eh. As filler floater episodes go, if it's on the background and the remote is 20 feet away, yeah, I'm not like rushing and tripping over myself to turn it off, but I'm certainly not paying attention to it either. That darn Cats is a furball yakking 5 out of 10. I don't want to live on this planet anymore. This is the episode that's from. I didn't talk about it in the episode itself, but the shut up and take my money meme would actually come from Attack of the Killer app, and yeah, that's a neat fact. This is the evolution versus creationism episode. Got a flying spaghetti monster in it and everything. Protesters are mad the theory of evolution is being taught in schools, so Hubert goes out to find the missing link that his scholarly rival and talking orangutan, Dr. Banjo, believes doesn't exist. They keep going back and forth on the missing link, and it is sharp satire. I do want to commend it there. They never stop making a point, and I do appreciate that. However, when Hubert does find the link, Dr. Banjo shows it on a dinosaur, and Hubert is just done with it all. So he goes to live on another planet and just sort of do his own thing and let them believe whatever they want. This is when the professor inadvertently starts an evolutionary chain of his own, and robots begin evolving at an exponential rate. The professor has become the divine creator he swears doesn't exist. On the one hand, it's an episode that stays very close to the argument it's satirizing, but on the other hand, much like A Taste of Freedom, that argument has been going on for a very long time and is probably not going to stop anytime soon. I think the satire is strong enough that it stands on its own 2 feet, and the jokes are honestly pretty solid. I enjoyed seeing the robot dinosaurs and the robot cavemen, and it's always aware of what it was saying and doing, even having the robots start to look at the humans as a completely different creature. The episode is just good classic Futurama, and I really appreciate that. And as much as he's annoying in this episode, I gotta admit, I do enjoy Dr. Banjo as a recurring character. He gets to be pretty fun, and it's nice to hear Dave Herman just find a character that he really resonates with, and it's you know, you take those. A Clockwork Origin is an evolution challenging 8 out of 10. All right, Futurama freaks, get out your pen and paper because it's time for the body swap episode. If every member of Planet Express swap bodies and they can't swap back into a body they've swapped from, how many swap rotations will they have to go through before everyone is back in their original bodies? Try and figure it out for yourself before the end of the episode. That's it. That's the whole idea behind the episode. Everyone is swapping bodies for some reason or another. Fry and Leela want to see if they'd love each other if they didn't look the way they did, so they get freaky as the Professor and Zoidberg. Bender wants to swap with the robot prince. The professor ends up in Bender as a sort of daredevil type. Washbucket ends up in Amy and tries to seduce Scruffy, her one true love. And it's a lot of vignettes that go in a lot of different directions, and it's a lot. But at its core, it's them tackling a sci-fi trope idea with such care and accuracy you could actually figure out how many people they'd need to add to the swap circle in order for everyone to get back to their original bodies, even with the help of some globetrotters. The little side vignettes are fun, and honestly, the episode as a whole is a solid watch that celebrates the attention to detail that fans have come to love from the show, and shows how much the creators love making episodes like this. The Prince parts drag a bit too long, but overall it was just as good as any Fox-era episode, honestly. The Prisoner of Benda is a head games loving 8 out of 10. It's the Comic-Con episode. Oh, and everyone is doing Futurama cosplay, and there's a Futurama panel where Matt Groening and David X. Cohen play themselves. Ha ha! 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 Fry is making a comic book and even asks legendary comic creator Sergio Aragones what to improve when he tells him how just utterly horrible it is. He even does his own voices for it. And then Lrrr crashes the Comic-Con and is going through a breakup pending divorce and has to conquer Earth to try and win back Nda with Leela's help. Yeah, it's a Lrrr episode where Fry is doing his own thing, making a comic. Lrrr gets his groove back, almost sleeps with a futuristic furry, and, yeah. The start of the episode felt very obligatory. So many shows have a con element where they have to pop it and go, hee-haw, fourth wall got broken. But I don't know, it kind of sticks around for too long. It could have been 2 minutes shorter. Not to mention the Comedy Central era relies heavily on Maurice LaMarche. Like, he was a lot of characters before, don't get me wrong, but I mean, he is like every third character in this episode. Oh, look, they're trying to fake Lrrr invading. Quick, get Orson Welles to recreate his War of the Worlds broadcast so Maurice LaMarche can do his Orson Welles impression he's been doing for like 22 years, since like The Critic, to help Lrrr, who's played by, Maurice LaMarche. Oh, look, Morbo is reporting. What's that? That's Maurice too? Sure, fine, who cares? Again, Maurice LaMarche, I cannot emphasize enough, is easily one of the most versatile and talented voice actors of the modern age. But give him a break. He carries so many episodes because he plays so many characters. Like, if it's not him, it's usually Dave Herman, and that's fine. But man, oh manity, it sticks out like a sore thumb in this episode. Lrrconcilable Ndifferences is hard to pronounce and fine to watch. 6 or, even 7 out of 10. Alright, I'm salty about this episode. This episode is lauded as the 100th episode of Futurama. They do their 100th delivery, Bender throws a big 100 party with all your favorite characters, and it's a whole thing. The show aired on Fox for 72 episodes, and 4 movies would come out after the fact. So if each movie is an episode, that's 76 episodes. And that would make this the 88th episode overall, meaning Cold Warriors next season would be the proper 100th episode, right? Wrong. See, the reason this is the 100th episode is because the movies were broken into 16 episodes for syndication. It's a very, very Kraft mac and cheesy claim in my eyes. But this episode is admittedly the better 100th episode by far. Leela gets outed as a mutant and gets sent to live in the sewers, where she fights to get mutants their own freedom and the right to be above ground, as we learn about the mighty land Titanic that sank into the sewers all those years ago, and the noble sacrifice of Mr. Astor, a rich big shot that saved a young mutant girl who would go on to be Leela's grandmother. The mutants are allowed above ground, and admittedly, I appreciate that they never go back on that agreement, and you start to see the mutants being a part of everyday life. I genuinely really enjoyed the episode. And Mark Mothersbaugh of Devo even guest stars. It's a fun little adventure that manages to honestly turn a movie-level plot into a quick 21-minute story. I honestly wish it was a movie instead of, say, Bender's Game, especially since there's lasting consequences to it and it does address issues that have been around in the show since the early seasons, whereas Bender's Game is effectively just written off. It's fantastic, and I really wish it was the season finale so we could end it on a really high note. It's just not, though. It's not a 12-episode season, is it? The Mutants Are Revolting is a ship-sinking, show-stealing 9 out of 10. For the next 3 seasons, the season finale is an anthology episode. An anthology of interest? Nope, just an anthology. And the first one is the only holiday special of the Comedy Central era, and it's there, I guess. Coolio and Al Gore come back to guest star. Yay! Story 1 is about how a bunch of evergreen trees start putting out way too much oxygen, and the planet burns up when a lighter clicks on. The second is Bender celebrating Robonica and needing oil, so the crew go down to get some, get crushed alive, turn into oil, and he comes back several millions of years later to see a Robonica oil wrestling miracle. The third is, we don't really know what Kwanzaa really is either, so stop asking. Each one ends with most, if not all, of the crew being taken out, and not a single one is even remotely all that interesting. It's easily the worst holiday special and kinda soured me on the idea as a whole. I'm not above saying I genuinely hate this episode. It is the null rod of episodes. It does nothing. Which is ironic because the other anthologies in the Comedy Central era actually do something. They actually have a through-line theme that runs through them. This one is just 3 stories that manage to go on for way too long and keep promoting a nut brand that doesn't exist. Which, I get the joke, it's just not funny. The Futurama Holiday Spectacular is a Christmas light accentuated, banister hanging noose of a 2 out of 10. Might have been a little extreme on that episode, but that's season 7. Anything I was right on, wrong on? What was your favorite episode? Least favorite? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like what you saw, make sure to like, subscribe, and tell your friends. We're out here. Season 7 was a season I was hesitant to revisit. I was afraid it was going to be an absolute slog to get through, and honestly, looking back at the Comedy Central era as a whole, not only is it one of the better seasons, but it also had some of the strongest episodes that stand up against any Fox era episodes. It was genuinely pleasant until the Xmas lights turned on. Next season, though, we're going to get into some proper Comedy Central style writing. We're going to get some microscopic benders, a clamping good time, and a sneeze with some heart. So make sure to wait for when we talk about Season 8. Anyway, that's going to do it for us here at the Lecture Hall, and if you want to support the channel, consider joining our membership or Patreon programs today. $2 a month and you get early access to videos, special polls starting next month, and your name on this very special list. Wowie zowie! Thank you all so much for watching. Stay strong, keep fighting. Your hard work is seen, and I'm proud of you. I know these sound cookie cutter, but it's true. You matter, and even if you just woke up and that's all you did today, that's something to appreciate. A rising tide will lift all ships, and I can feel a wave coming. Goodbye, everybody, and I'll see you next time.